Hey guys, Operator Drewski here, and today we're going to be talking about the Ghost Recon Wildlands open beta and also a little bit about the closed beta and my thoughts, my review about the two. The current state of the game, again, is in beta. I do want to remind you that if you're watching this video after the full game releases. So again, I'm going to be talking about the half version of the game where there's only like 2 provinces unlocked and such and all of that. So if you're watching this after the game releases, go watch another review or go watch my review that I'll probably make after the game releases. So first off, I want to talk about the overall basis of the game. If you don't know, Ghost Recon Wildlands is an open world. You go and attack objectives as a special operations team called the Ghosts. You're in a squad of 4. You can customize your character, you can customize your guns. These 4 people in your squad can either be artificial intelligence bots that follow you around. You can give them orders and stuff, or they can be your friends in cooperative play. So you can get up to 3 friends with you, so in total 4. To go and attack objectives and stuff. Basically, you're fighting the Santa Blanca drug cartel in Bolivia with a lot of diverse locations. You can have a lot of diverse missions as well. There's side missions, there's main story quests and missions and stuff. And basically, it's a mix between the old Ghost Recon formula of Advanced Warfighter and Future Soldier. And now we have that kind of open world feeling of even like, not really Skyrim, but like Far Cry, for example. So basically, the gameplay, the execution of Ghost Recon Wildlands so far has been pretty dang good. I've played about 20 hours of it, I would estimate so far, and overall, since the closed beta, now that we have a new region unlocked, I've been able to see an entire different location and exactly how much more diverse the game is just in one more location. The landscape, for example, is crazy how diverse it is. There's only 2 locations we've been in again, and the, I guess, transition from a green lush forest to almost like a snowy tundra area in the western area of the map is like awe-astounding. It's pretty crazy to be able to go to different locations like that, and I'm super excited to see what the rest of the map is like because honestly, the map is huge. I don't know exactly how big it is, but I estimated by just putting some markers that it's around like 20 by 20 kilometers. I don't know if that's correct whatsoever. It could be like 15 by 15 or like 30 by 30, but it's still, I know at least that it's larger than 15 by 15 kilometers, which is huge. That's bigger than Arma 3 Altis by a lot. That's bigger than Arma 2 Chernarus. That's, I think, bigger than Skyrim. I'm not really sure about that, but I think it is. Much bigger than Fallout 4's map. You know, it's a big open area, and there's a lot of vehicles that help you move around this place. There's civilian vehicles, there's military, rebel vehicles, for example. There's planes, there's helicopters, and some of the vehicles we haven't seen yet because they're in different regions that are not in the current regions in the beta. But overall, the gameplay, the execution is really, really good. Basically, what you're doing most of the time is that you look on the map, you find an objective that you need to go and attack, and you can choose what objectives you want to attack, by the way. There are story missions, but I think once the full game comes out, you can actually go to any province. I think all the provinces are unlocked, and you can go to any single province you want and pretty much attack whoever you want at any point in time and do whatever objectives you want as well. You don't have to go down a linear campaign, which is pretty cool because my friends and I kind of just said, hey, we don't really want to do missions in this location because we've already been in this location in the closed beta. Let's go to the new area that's in the open beta and go do missions there. And although we had to restart our entire game saves because it was the open beta now, we had to go. We didn't have to go through the same missions again before we went to the new area, which was really nice. You can just go wherever you want, whenever you want, so you can have a super low level player that is able to go in the same areas and do the same things that a highest level player is going to be, or highest geared player, because there's not really any levels in the game. But first off, gameplay is good. Gunplay is really, really sharp. Basically, what you're doing most of the time is, again, attacking objectives, going into compounds, stopping convoys and stuff like that. A lot of diverse missions in this game. But basically, the combat is really, really good. I think that overall the droning of missions before you go in and doing all these stealthy stuff is perfectly executed. You can go in these missions and do them pretty well, and honestly, I will say it does get a little bit dry unless you're on the harder difficulties where you actually have to be creative in what you do. I think playing on the 2 lower difficulties, there's 4 in total, the 2 lower difficulties are Child's Play, I think anybody could beat the game at the 2 lower difficulties. The 2 higher difficulties are definitely what I would suggest playing the game on, especially the highest difficulty called Extreme. That makes you really have to focus on not getting sighted or not getting seen, and the enemies are actually realistic. You really do have to make a plan when you're playing on this extreme setting about these objectives, these compounds that you're going into, and you most definitely have to have an actual team of players helping you out. And going in and coordinating your small squad to go and attack objectives is really entertaining. It has the same good feel that Arma 3 gives you whenever you complete an objective like perfectly, whenever you sneak in and the enemies don't see you, but it happens so much more smoothly and so much more seamlessly that it feels a lot more just easy to do, more accessible than something like Arma 3. And I will say, I will kind of compare this, although it's a very, very different game, I will compare this to Arma 3. In terms of mission diversity, the missions are really, really well done. As an Arma 3 mission builder for people that, you know, have to be in gigantic squads, and I have to be basically a god that controls the enemy forces against real players, these missions that are placed at different locations are all diverse. They're all different. For example, we had to go and attack an objective in the easier area, and the easier area had a basic mission, just a few guys standing next to it. You had to take them out. If they were not taken out fast enough, then they would call for reinforcements, and the reinforcements could either be their own rebels, their own like people that just are kind of with AKs and stuff, and they are not really good at fighting, or they could be the heavier armed UNIDAD forces, which has these gigantic jeeps and these gigantic miniguns on top of the jeeps, and they are all armored soldiers that take a lot more shots to kill. Basically, the entire game is really reactive. You can go into an objective, and if it's a tougher objective, it's a bigger objective that's more of a military compound instead of, like, let's say, just like a recently controlled town by some rebels, you can have a lot more advanced technologies there. You can have SAM sites, you can have drone jammers, you can have power generators that power sirens that will alarm the area surrounding this base that it's under attack. There's a lot more diversity to all these locations. And I will say that was the one thing that I was worried about before I ever played any of these betas, is that how diverse are all the objectives going to be? Can the gameplay be different every single playthrough? And I will say, yes, it can. And it's honestly impressive. I didn't think it would be this good in terms of that diversity of objectives. It's crazy. We were going into, you know, basements of buildings, and then we were going into like abandoned mines and stuff, and attacking these cartel groups that are hiding within these super deep mines up in the mountains of like snow and stuff. It was really exciting. Some of the objectives, again, like had the drone jammer. We approached an objective on our last mission, and we realized that it was jammed by a jammer that was, or our drones were jammed by a jammer that was on the far side of the objective. And there were actually 2 generators in this objective. You can take out these generators to both disable the sirens nearby, or the drone jammers as well, or the SAM sites and all this stuff. But what was interesting is that we took out a power generator, but it was only a power generator for this certain area of the base. The base was so big that there was another power generator on the other side that you would have had to go take out to disable that drone jammer. It's pretty interesting. The difficulty of these bases increases as you get into different areas, and also with the higher difficulty as well. I think it's perfect. I really do think that the extreme difficulty is what you should play the first few times, just to make sure that you can see what the game is really about. I do think that the extreme difficulty is the way that the game should be played, because it does really punish you if you get caught. It does punish you if you're not stealthy, and if you get into open combat, you are going to die, no matter how skilled you are. I think of myself as humbly as a pretty good player in terms of third-person shooters and first-person, and oh my gosh, am I challenged in the extreme difficulty. It's pretty tough. You will die a lot on the extreme difficulty if you get caught. If you're not caught, it feels amazing, because these objectives are actually hard to do, and they're actually challenging, and it's pretty impressive just how well the AI can react to different things. I wanted to note one thing as well. In the trailers for the game, they showed, or like a lot of the gameplay showcases, you know, they showed the guys that were entering these bases, and they showed them being crazy creative. You know, they really wanted to tell the audience that you can be so creative with your ways that you can get into these places. I wanted to test that when I first started the game. I wanted to test that. So I put some C4 on a fuel like tank at the far side of an objective on the far east side. So I walked over to the west side, and then I needed to get some guys off of a little loot thing that I needed to go also actually destroy as well. So I need to put some C4 on it as well. But the C4 was still on the east side of the objective, and I needed to go into this small little area, and I was only playing with my AI bots that were helping me, so I wasn't playing with friends, so I couldn't really coordinate a good actual shot on these guys without really having one of them see me, one of them, you know, hit the alarm, or one of them scream for help or something. So I had to lure them out somehow. So I blew up the C4 on the other side of the base, and guess what? Almost instantly, I hear them start chattering. They started talking loudly. They started freaking out, and they started like the guys that were closest to the explosion started instantly reacting to the explosion. They ran exactly to where it was. They started pulling their guns up and looking towards the sky and stuff. And then the guys inside this little area that I needed to get into were starting to trot out the building and walk towards it. It was awesome. It was so cool, and we actually were able to successfully distract these guys. It was pretty fun. It was awesome. And it surprised me that it was actually useful to distract enemies in that type of way, and that the enemies were actually smart enough that they would fully react to it without any actual person up in the sky like Arma 3 has with its Zeus option, so you can actually control the AI from a person, like as playing as God kind of, telling those guys to go out of that room to go investigate that fire. I think it was really cool. Again, I think I talked about the missions a little bit too much, so let's talk about the most controversial part of Ghost Recon Wildlands so far, and that is the performance and the graphics of the game. Now, the main thing that I'm seeing on the internet is a lot of prejudice towards the game because it is made by Ubisoft. And you have to respect that, because if you've watched Crowdcat's video about Ubisoft downgrading their graphics, their graphics of their games, it is a very influential, a very moving video that you go wow to. You see how the games have drastically not improved since their E3 showcases. And this isn't exactly as evil as most people put it out to be. It's basically where if you showcase a game at E3 and it's coming out in 2 years, it's a very early version of the game. Don't expect an E3 showcase ever to look like the actual game, because in 2 years, if the game's coming out so far away, it's going to be so much different. Unless the dev team has already made the game and then the rest of the 2 years are just for marketing, trust me, it's going to be different. The game of, let's say, for example, Rainbow Six Siege, which I think was the biggest difference, has totally changed in the last 2 years, and I respect its changes because, one, it can run on the cheapest of PCs, and two, the game is absolutely much more diverse, much more complicated than it used to be when it first was at E3. Anybody that's saying that Ubisoft has downgraded Ghost Recon Wildlands is absolutely false. I think that the game honestly looks better than it did in the trailers. And I'm not just saying that in defense of the game, because I think the game is good. I think the game is good, and I would be the first guy to critique its downgrades if it were to be downgraded. This game is one of the best games that are one of the best looking games that are coming out this year, and I'm not just saying that. I'm not sponsored. I'm not saying this to get anything. I'm honestly telling you, it's a good-looking game. The thing with Wildlands is that I actually wasn't able to play it at ultra settings at 60 FPS. Now I am. Back in the closed beta, my performance was like 30 to 40 FPS in ultra settings. Now it's around 60 to 70, and at 1440p, it's around the same. I didn't really see much of a huge difference at all with changing to 1440p, to be honest. That's just the 1080 for you. It doesn't really care about different resolutions. I will say this, though, that the open beta is much, much more optimized than the older closed beta version of the game. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know what has changed, but it runs much, much better than the closed beta did, and it just... It looks amazing as well. I think a lot of people are also just prejudiced because of the entire Ubisoft downgrades thing, and a lot of people are also just scared because of the bad bitrate of videos that they watch on YouTube. YouTube is one of the #1 things that people go and look at to see what gameplay is like in a game, and if YouTube's bitrate looks bad and people don't understand how bitrate works in videos, they're gonna think that the game looks bad. I'm saying this because I was streaming Ghost Recon Wildlands at 720p at 3500 kilobytes per second, which is a pretty good amount for 720p. 720p streams are usually like 2500, but my internet can carry 3500, so I stream at 3500. 3500 looks rather good. I'll put some footage of it up right now, but lower bit rates like this, even standard YouTube videos at 1080p, make some scenes look absolutely shit. I will say it, YouTube, I wish you were to heighten your bitrate because it looks terrible. I think Luton actually posted a picture of what his video originally was and what it was in-game in YouTube, which looked absolutely terrible compared to what it was originally when he rendered it out of his Adobe Premiere, his Sony Vegas, or whatever he edits with. It was different. It was so much more gross. You couldn't barely even see what was happening in the scene because it was a forest scene. Most forest scenes with lots of moving parts, lots of moving trees, and the sky is moving and all that. Basically, bitrate can look really, really good if you're in an empty room with very, very few objects and no movement. But bitrate looks terrible in something like video games or moving cameras because the bitrate is trying to basically compress data into a playable, very, very lightweight video. But when it's something like a forest that requires a lot more detail compared to just an empty room with a chair sitting on the floor, it's gonna look so much worse, trust me. And in this picture I'm showing you of Ghost Recon Wildlands right now, it might look pretty bad. It might look kind of blurry and pixely and stuff, but when I put the raw picture up, you'll see it slowly creep into full pretty detail. Nothing is moving in this screenshot right now, and therefore it looks freaking beautiful. And it aggravates me so much because some people think that this is what the game looks like when the game actually looks like this image, this screenshot right here, and they don't understand what bitrate is, and so they say the game sucks and it looks terrible, and then their friends say the game sucks because he said it looks sucks, and it's just So yeah, basically I tested it with a 750 Ti as well, and basically the 750 Ti is one of the more minimal graphics cards that you want for this game. I wouldn't really suggest it. I would recommend at least a 1050 Ti 4GB variant for this game because you really do have to have a lot of RAM to run the texture detail higher, and actually you can run the game on lower settings and still make it look pretty good. I want to ask you with this single screenshot, what preset setting do you think that this screenshot was taken on? Ultra, very high, medium, or low, or very low? I'm going to give you a few seconds. I'm going to let you look at this, let you process. Does it look good? Does it look bad? Look like it's very high ultra? Does it look like it's medium, maybe? Or maybe that's very low? It's actually the very low preset. Only 3 different things are changed. The anisotropic filtering is maxed up all the way. I know this won't actually do anything to frame rate because it never does in games. The anti-aliasing is on TAA, which is a temporal filtering, which is extremely lightweight and makes the game look so much less pixely. Also, what's interesting is that this picture is actually at 70% resolution of 1080p. I bet you didn't know that either. It's actually at 70%. The scaling of this picture was at 70%. Scaling of 1080p. So it's, I don't know, is that 720p? I'm not really sure, but it's something close to 720p and it still looks that good. Yeah. And then also we have shadow detail at medium. So that's basically all you have to do to make the game look good. And the game runs on my GTX 1080 compared to my 750 Ti, which will run this at like 50-ish frames at these settings. It'll run the game at like 160 FPS on these settings, which is crazy. And yeah, anybody that's really barking about the game's performance, maybe just upgrade your PC to at least like a 1060 or above and run the game on what you're supposed to run it, which is like medium to very high settings, and you'll get perfect 60 frames. I don't know what people are arguing about if they talk about the bad performance of this game. The CPU usage is extremely optimized. I have a 6-core processor right now, and even on my 4-core it worked just the same. But my 6-core, what was nice to see is that in my task manager, all the little I guess graphs of CPU usage were all equivalent, meaning that the game was equivalently and equally spreading out its load onto all 6 cores, which is extremely good for the PC gaming community. This means that it is well optimized for processors that are either low in cores or high in cores, and it'll auto detect the amount of cores you have and it'll optimize the game for that processor. which is really, really nice. If you check out some games like Arma 3, for example, Arma 3 only runs like 3 cores maybe, and then like 1 core it runs barely at all, and then the rest it just forgets about. It doesn't even understand that most computers have more than like 2 cores most of the time. When you start Arma 3, only 1 core will go up to 100% for like a quarter second. That just shows that they just optimize it for a dual core processor basically. It's really, really old code basically. Additionally, a game like Ghost Recon Wildlands also runs pretty high RAM usage as well, which is good because then it doesn't dump its memory into the page file, which is a location on your hard drive, which is much, much slower to retrieve data from than your RAM, which is much, much faster. It will run in 64-bit. It's fully 64-bit, so I saw my RAM running around like 4 gigabytes most of the time. If I was in a little bit more advanced areas, I would see it run like 4.2, 4.3, which is really good. It's good that it runs a little bit higher RAM, especially in games that mimic kind of how the game works. Like Arma 3, for example, don't even go above like 2.5 at the moment, and basically it shows in the performance of the game. But yeah, I think the optimization is fine. I think the people that are having problems maybe haven't just installed drivers or don't have the hardware for it. Sorry, go read the minimum requirements or go read the recommended requirements. It works fine for me and my 4 friends, and one of my friends is actually running with a 750 Ti primary on his computer, but the CPU usage isn't even much at all in the game. It runs pretty solid, and this is my friend's i7 7700K, her usage while playing the game as well. So this is like the basic gaming, like super gaming CPU at the moment running the game. And as you can see, it never runs anywhere high at all. So it's good, it's well balanced, and it's well optimized. Now, we did have some big problems within the betas as well. I wouldn't really call them big because they weren't really bugging me much other than one. And the one in particular that was bugging me that I'm going to say first is the helicopter flight model. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened with the helicopter flight model. I don't know that if it's on controller it maybe works better, but holy crap, it is, oh gosh. I think it's well-rounded in the community right now that's surrounding this game is that the helicopter flight model is nearly unusable. You'll descend faster than light. You'll smash into the ground when you barely tap the descend altitude button. You'll pull up and then your helicopter just starts to randomly super gain altitude. And then if you push forwards and let your helicopter lean forwards, it won't stay that way. It'll actually continue to dive if you keep on that W key. It'll dive, and it's so awkward. And if you let go while it's diving, meaning that the helicopter should in real life and in Battlefield even, and in Arma and in DCS and all these helicopter flight sims, it'll pull back up slowly, which is what it usually does. But in Ghost Recon Wildlands, it instantly flares backwards. If you let go, the helicopter is basically in Arma like auto hover mode, and it will just flare backwards to lose all speed, and it's the most annoying thing ever. Very, very uncontrollable. The plane flight physics are fine. They're very basic. They're very understandable. Anybody who's played any game like Arma, Battlefield, GTA even, you'll understand the plane physics fine. The helicopter is so much different from anything. GTA flight physics, totally different from GTA. Even Battlefield flight physics, which I think are basic but also realistic, and not as realistic as Arma 3, but they're realistic enough that they make sense in an actual logical person's mind. Like anybody can fly a helicopter in Battlefield 3 if they take, or Battlefield 4 if they take some time into just like learning the controls and stuff. Like you understand it so quick. I don't understand why they nerfed helicopter flight physics to oblivion, because literally now you're flying a Nerf gun. You're flying a Nerf gun. You're flying something that doesn't fly like you want it to. You're basically driving a car that is backwards in the steering wheel, and also if you let off the gas, guess what? You instantly apply the brakes. The car applies the brakes for you if you let off the gas. That's basically how this helicopter works. It's so weird. It doesn't make sense. It's not simple. It's another flight. It's not a helicopter. It doesn't act like a helicopter, and it's the one thing I want to rant about. It's not a helicopter. It's no. I refuse to believe that if you let off the stick, you instantly somehow pull back and instantly halt in the middle of the air. And if you descend, you cannot descend controllably whatsoever. You just have to smash into the ground every single landing. That's how it works, basically. I don't know. The flight physics are fine for planes, but not for helis. Also, the vehicles are a little bit slippery. if you go down a mountain sideways, which in theory should be a little bit harder for you to do in terms of like slipperiness in a car than going down it forwards, because your tires are spread out for better surface area and if you're going sideways. But other than that, your car should not slide down mountains sideways like a banana on like a sheet metal. Like it's so slippery. I don't understand the car driving models either. It's not as bad whatsoever as the helicopter flight model, but the driving is kind of weird as well. I'm slowly understanding it more, but it's still pretty difficult. And also it's like you have no repercussions for driving off a cliff. You can drive off the tallest cliff in the game. You will not get injured if you hit the ground 100 feet below. Even if you land like nose first in your car, you're fine. You're 10 out of 10. You're ready to go. You're a ghost. You just took like 80 G's to the forehead and you're perfectly fine. Yeah, so that's one thing. And then also we had some desync and player glitches, which was almost similar to Arma 2 desync. If you played Arma 2 back in the day, you know what I mean by Arma 2 desync, where a person will run in one direction, their internet will disconnect, and they just keep running in that one direction. Or they run in place. Or they get into a bicycle, or they get into a motorcycle like Jamie did, and end up running behind the bicycle, or the motorbike. Jamie got into a dirt bike. She started to drive around, and she wasn't really driving the dirt bike. She was running behind it, trying to chase it around. And we were like, what is happening? There's a dirt bike that's by itself driving around in circles, and you're directly chasing it. And she said she was on the dirt bike, and we all just laughed our asses off, because on our screens, she was running behind it. On her screen, she was riding on it, which was hilarious. Also, some moments where a player will get into a vehicle, and they'll just stand up. They'll have their foot in the floor of in the front seat, and then their body will go through the ceiling, the cabin of the car, and they'll just be standing. Yeah, so that's one thing as well. Those are the main cons, I think, in my opinion, are the glitches with player movement, desync and stuff that sometimes happen between different clients of the game. And then also the helicopter flight model is absolutely potato. Other than that, though, the game so far is much better than everybody is really kind of ranting at it to be. I think a lot of people are giving it a bad name just because it's a Ubisoft game, but I think you should check this out. And right now is the perfect time to. It's an open beta. Again, I'm not sponsored. I'm not trying to say this for any other thing. I honestly suggest if you enjoy my channel and the games that I play, go check this out. It's a good game. It's fun. Give it a try. So guys, that was my kind of review over the open beta and closed beta. Hope you enjoyed all the memes, and I will see you in the next one.